Lou Eisen. Yes, the mic's up there. I'm coming to you from a different room in my apartment. We're just in the middle of constructing my office here. And today we're going to talk about the fight that took place September 14th, 1923. And my daughter would say, well, you would know that fight, Dad, because you were probably there. No, I wasn't. But it's the fight between the incredible Jack Dempsey, the world heavyweight champion, and Luis Firpo, his tremendous challenger, who was 6'3.5". He was from the Argentine, wasn't scaled, but hit like a bull moose. Dempsey was 6'1.5". Now, I have it here. Dempsey is, won the title July 4th, 1919. And the interesting thing about that, of course, for me, is I spoke to Bud Schoberg when I was in Cinderella Man. I was on the set, and he was there. And he sat in the fourth row with his father, B.P. Schoberg. And B.P. Schoberg ran Paramount Films. So he saw Dempsey walk into the ring, and he met him before in the dressing room. So years later, Doc Kearns, Dempsey's manager, who was a complete rogue and would gamble the money away. So if Dempsey got $1 million for the fight, check goes to Kearns, and Kearns says, here's 150 grand. And Dempsey goes, what are you talking about? Well, I owe 300,000 to this gambler, 200,000. And he'd say, yeah, but my take is like 700 grand. You get the rest, but I can't pay the gamblers off of that, Jack. Too bad. So anyways, the thing was that in order to make money years later, Kearns would sell a story to papers that Dempsey had his hands in plaster of Paris. Complete BS. I have a photo from the Robert Shepard collection, shows him walking into the ring with the wraps, the gauze and the tape. And Bud Schoberg was sitting several feet away. Bud Schoberg wrote The Harder They Fall on the waterfront, what makes Sammy run. So he was there. And he said his wraps were clean. Dempsey was a clean fighter. He had hard hands because he would soak his face and his fists in beef brine for hours on end, 10, 15 hours. And they said he had hands like anvils. Dempsey didn't need to add any stuff to his gloves. He already hit hard. Plus, he had perfect balance. He knew balance. He knew leverage. He knew how to plant his feet. And in baseball, when you have different pitchers and pitchers today, when I was growing up in the 1960s, you had Sandy Koufax, the greatest pitcher ever. He had a curveball and a fastball, and he would tip them off before he threw it. Guys couldn't hit it because of the movement on the ball. Today, you have pitchers that have 5 pitches, a knuckle curve, a slider, changeup, fastball, cut fastball, screwball maybe, and they throw them in different ways. Dempsey had 3 or 4 versions of each punch. His left hook, which broke Jess Willard's jaw in something like 6 places. He had the shovel hook, where it was a combination hook uppercut, where he would start from here and then turn it. He had different jabs. He had different right hooks. But Dempsey was a smart fighter. He was looked on as a walk-in face-first slugger, and that was the farthest thing from the truth. He had a great trainer in Jimmy DeForest, and Dempsey was smart in the ring. He could think ahead. And when Dempsey had a guy hurt, if he hit you a shot in the head and you were staggered, his next shot would be a left hook to the liver. Bring your hands down, and then he'd just rifle your head 4 or 5 shots, and you were done. Dempsey was a smart guy in the ring, and he learned from every single fighter that he fought. Dempsey was born in Manassas, Colorado, in 1895. Dempsey is still, to me, one of the most significant figures in boxing history. Mike Tyson is the reincarnation of Jack Dempsey. That's the guy who really excited him when he watched all these old films of boxers. When you watch a prize fight today, or if you watch the Hearns-Hagler fight, or Hagler-Leonard fight, or if you watch one of Ali's fights, or one of Mike Tyson's fights, that those butterflies you get in your stomach just before the bell rings? Jack Dempsey did that. Jack Dempsey was so popular, he brought in the Jazz Age. He was the reason for the golden age of sports. In part, Babe Ruth as well, but no one was like Dempsey. Ruth was earning $80,000 a year. Dempsey was earning $1 million a fight. And they had to build stadiums to house all the people that wanted to see him. Boyle's 30 acres, 80 to 100,000 people in New Jersey. Dempsey was just a monster. Polo Grounds were full on this day when he fought Luis Firpo. Now, when I go to my records, so it shows here, for instance, Dempsey wins the title, 1919, and I'm just looking. Actually, I have it on the page for the great for Firpo. Sorry about that, folks. So he's fighting him early on, and the thing about when he fought Dempsey, of course, the great Jack Dempsey, is that Dempsey had several fights before he fought Firpo. So he fought in Shelby, Montana. Sorry about that. Against Tommy Gibbons, which bankrupted the town. He won a decision over Gibbons. It was really a light heavyweight. And before that, he won the title. And then but he beats Billy Miskey, who had kidney disease, and he knocked him out early to save him from a sustained beating. He beat Bill Brennan, who was murdered by the mafia shortly after that. He knocked Brennan out. Then he beats Carponche at Boyle's 30 Acres. And Carponche was really a light heavyweight, although he fought heavyweights. How good was Dempsey? Carponche hit him flush, right hand on the chin. Carponche broke his thumb in 3 places, broke his knuckles. And Dempsey was just phenomenally strong. Dempsey only weighed 89 to 196, 6'1", but his strength was just unhuman. And of course, Carponche said for the next 7 years, I never felt pain like that. He caved his ribs in, and then he knocked him out. And before the fight, in the dressing room, the promoter Tex Rickard said to him, don't kill him. Let the fight go at least 3 rounds, which he did. And he said, and you can knock him out, but just don't take his life. We don't want a fatality. To me, the single most amazing thing about Jack Dempsey's entire career is that he never killed a man in the ring. And believe me, with the way he fought and hurt people, it's a miracle that he didn't. So Dempsey's destroying everyone. He's walking through, everyone. So now they set up a fight with Luis Firpo. Who is this guy, Firpo? Well, Firpo had beaten Primo Carnero, had beaten a guy named Floyd Johnson, not Primo Carnero, Jess Willard. And they were building him up because he was a big guy. Firpo wasn't really a skilled fighter by any means, but he could punch. He was extremely strong, and he was like a modern heavyweight, 6'3" and a half. Well, not a modern, but 6'3" and a half, 220 pounds. He was a much bigger man, and people thought this unskilled guy, Dempsey's just going to, destroy him. And so what happens is in this fight, I apologize for the delay. I'm just looking at my facts here. So in this fight with Firpo, they have it at the Polo Grounds, and it's an incredible fight when you think about it, because there were 11 knockdowns in the fight, and Dempsey got knocked through the ropes. That was the big thing about the fight. Sorry about the delay here. So the referee was Johnny Gallagher. The judges were Kid McPartland, George Patrick. So as it says here on it was a great slugfest. BoxRec says Firpo goes down 7 times in the first round. Now, this is the crux of the fight. Late in the round, he hits Dempsey. Dempsey goes through the ropes. There was a total of 11 knockdowns, and Dempsey wins in the second round. He knocked him out 7 times. Now, today, a fight would be stopped, but Firpo got up each time. He got hit, but there's a story behind this. After this fight, Firpo, there was a rule because of this fight that was instituted that we all know, that you have to go to the farthest neutral corner. Back at that time, when you dropped the guy, you could stand right over him, and when he got up, bang, hit him again. People watching the fight and boxing officials thought this isn't palatable to the public. The public doesn't like this because this isn't really a fight. This is a mugging. I mean, in a real fight on the street, of course, you don't give your guy time to recover. This is supposed to be a sport. So they wanted to put the farthest neutral corner rule, and that came in because of Dempsey. And that plays into his later loss in the long count when he fought Gene Tunney in their second fight, although that fight was controlled by a mob referee. Anyways, getting ahead of myself. So after this fight, for years, Firpo and Dempsey became very close friends. Firpo would go have Dempsey visit him in Argentina. Dempsey became a billionaire, Firpo. He owned all the American car dealerships in Argentina. He owned beef, cattle. I mean, and Dempsey would come down to visit him. He'd show off Dempsey to his friends in Argentina, and he'd slip Dempsey a check for like $100,000. Thanks for coming. And it wasn't personal, but what upset Firpo was, and he had a good point. He said, I won the fight 4 times. And he did. He said, first of all, it's one thing to knock him in down and stand over me. That's not really right. But those were the rules. The other thing was he hit me when I was down several times. And Dempsey did. And he said, that's a disqualification. The rules back then said, and still say, when a guy goes down and his knees are on the canvas, you cannot hit him. And Dempsey hit him when he was down. That's not allowed. But the referee at the time, he let it go. So, and then when Dempsey gets out of the ring in the first round, they're fighting. Firpo gets up, he's concussed. Now, as we all know, if you really know your boxing, if you really know it, a hurt fighter is a dangerous fighter because he knows he's a 1 or 2 punches away from getting out of there. So he's going to put everything he has behind every shot he throws. And he catches Dempsey with a huge shot. Dempsey goes back and through the ropes. Now, today, and I think back then, you had to get back in today within 30 seconds. And remember when Joe Smith knocked out Bernard Hopkins, and Hopkins couldn't make it back in the 30 seconds. So he goes through the ropes. He goes ass over TKO, his legs go up in the air. Now, when you go through the ropes then and today, and when you go down on the mat, a boxer has to get up on his own volition. He can't be helped by anyone. If you're a fan in the audience and you grab the boxer and you help him get up, he's disqualified. You're not allowed to do that. So he's got to do it on his own. And that was the rule back then. It's still the rule today. So when a boxer gets knocked down today, the referee can't help him up unless the fight's over. So Dempsey goes through the ropes. He just goes through the ropes, and all these New York sports writers, and Firpo had a great line. He said it was like the writers were giving him a back massage because they're writing, they're looking, they're writing, they're looking, they're writing, and all of a sudden, thump, Dempsey lands on them, hits them, his back hits them all in the face, knocks them back. And they're like, what the hell? And they're just like, get off of us. And of course, typewriters, they're hitting every key. His back is marked up. But of course, what they're writing is all screwed up. So they push him back into the ring, and he's out. Dempsey's out. And Firpo attacks him. He knows this, but there's not much time left in the first round. So Dempsey just covers up. He grabs Firpo. And when the round's over, he goes back to his corner. And there's Doc Kearns and Jimmy DeForest. They put ice on his testicles. They put smelling salts, under his nose. Not directly under. You'd kill him if he did that. But they break it, slapping him around. And he comes to, and he goes out for the second round. And Kearns said, this is it. If you want to keep your title, get rid of him now. Because if you don't want to lose, you don't want to lose your house, all your money, all your future, get him out. So, and he did. He goes out, he knocks him down. Firpo can't get up. And then he helps Firpo to the corner. People talk about the Hearns-Hagler fight, the greatest three rounds in the history of boxing. It's among them. It's certainly the top 2 or 3, but the greatest 2 rounds are Firpo Dempsey. It's similar to Ron Lyle, George Foreman, which my father said it was like watching 2 angry Kodiak bears bump into each other in the forest and saying, hey, what do you think you're doing? And then starting to fight. This fight starts. No one gave Firpo a chance. Dempsey was a huge favorite. Firpo was this awkward guy with a wild shock of black hair, and he would throw his punches around. He was just very strong. He wasn't a technically skilled boxer like Dempsey. And there were big controversies before the fight, one of which, now I know you're going to laugh at this, but it's true. Firpo brought a woman with him to New York, and he shared a hotel room with her. And all the New York papers wrote, how dare he do that? He's living in sin. It's immoral. And they interviewed him. And he said, excuse me, it's none of your business, he said to the newspapers. And he was right. We're 2 consenting adults. I'm not a married man. We're 2 consenting adults. I like this woman. She's with me. It's none of your business. And he was right. But they wouldn't leave him alone, which is why several years later he went back to Argentina. He'd had enough of this American hypocrisy. He's getting ready for the fight. He's training. The thing about Firpo, of course, back then when he's training for the fight is Firpo is a number 1 cheapskate. He won't spend money. Dempsey would see old fighters that he knew, broken down fighters, and give them money. If a kid walked up to Dempsey, he would give him a $20 bill. And it's 1920, so with $20, you're looking at, thousands, a nickel for a candy bar. So thousands of candy bars and magazines and cartoon books or whatever. So he doesn't want to pay for sparring partners. He just doesn't want to pay for it. He's freaking, he can't get it through his head that you got to pay for them, you got to house them, you got to feed them. It's a privilege to spar with me. And he has one or two guys he brought from Argentina. They're not that good, but he won't get an American sparring partner. Then he has his American trainer, and he just doesn't want to pay him. And the trainers that are there that are trying to train him, he's like, why would I pay you money? You're getting to work with me and I could win the World Heavyweight Championship. That should be good enough. And of course, they were too smart for that. As they said to him, it's not the way it works here. I don't know how it works in Argentina, but if you want me to train you and you want my expertise, you got to pay me cash money. And he wouldn't do it. So he wasn't really, it's not that he wasn't in shape. He just wasn't well trained. And he wasn't looking at films of Dempsey. He wasn't looking for flaws. He was just going to come in, close his eyes, and let his hands go. And whatever happened, happened. The amazing thing is, it almost happened. Theoretically, he was right. He should have won the world heavyweight title. And they probably could have gone back to Argentina and had a rematch before 150,000 people. So this fight starts and they come out and they're throwing punches and Dempsey, comes out in the exaggerated crouch, keeping his head offline. He's bobbing and weaving, he's throwing jabs. But Dempsey wasn't really one to have a feeling out round. Today, when you watch fights for a long time, it's the first round, the fighters are feeling themselves out. Dempsey fought like his car was double parked and the cops were about to give him a ticket. He didn't like feeling people out. He was in there to bust your skull open. Dempsey was like a feral, hungry lion being released from a cage with a craving for blood and then seeing a wounded antelope 5 feet in front of him. He just wanted to sink his teeth into you and let his hands go. And the fight starts and Dempsey gets him and they start hammering each other and Firpo goes down. And the referee starts to count and Firpo gets up and Dempsey's on him in a flash. Bang! Firpo goes down again. And people watching it are thinking, this is exciting, but this isn't going to last more than another 15, 20 seconds because no man alive could take that kind of punishment from the Jack Dempsey. And then Firpo gets up, tries to play for time, tries to hold Dempsey. Dempsey pushes him away, hook to the body, another hook to the body, left to the head, right to the head, and he goes down again. Third knockdown of the round. And Dempsey, to knock a guy down as big as Firpo takes a lot out of you. And Dempsey, you can see he's breathing heavy and he's like, what's going on here? Firpo had a tremendous ability to absorb punishment. So Dempsey's standing there right over him. Firpo gets up again, tries to put his hands out to hold Dempsey off. Dempsey gets through, knocks him down a fourth time. And Firpo's shaking his head. These aren't light punches. Dempsey's hitting him with everything. Dempsey's trying to kill him. He's not trying to knock him out. He's trying to punch through the man, as he said. He wants to kill the man. He doesn't want the man to get up. Not now, not ever. And Firpo hits the canvas for a fourth time. And the fans all over the Polo Grounds, where the New York Giants played, they're going berserk. They're going, this is incredible. He's been down 4 times. How can this happen? How can he take this kind of punishment and get up? No man can do this. He knocked down Willard, 7 times? And Willard kept getting up. And to me, that was the amazing thing about the Willard fight. The fact that Willard could get up. And Firpo's getting up. And Firpo's a much stronger man than Willard. And he gets up again and he's hanging on. He's punching back. He gets caught with another shot. His legs go out. He hits the canvas for a 5th time. And Dempsey in his corner his corner is starting to worry a bit now. His corner is like, what's going on here? What's it going to take to keep this guy on the mat? Dempsey eventually can't do this all night. He's going to run out of energy. And Firpo's lying there and he rolls over and he gets up. Firpo's corner is screaming at him to get up. Firpo gets up. He's still concussed. He's still hurt, but he's an incredibly, inhumanly strong man. So he gets up. Dempsey rushes into him, and it's just pounding his body to take his legs away. And as Firpo also said, he hit me low many times, and he did. Dempsey didn't hit people low deliberately. Dempsey just threw his punches. There was a 2.5-inch difference in height. So Dempsey's fighting from a crouch, and Firpo standing there, and Dempsey throws shots, and Firpo tries to move back, and he hits him low several times. But Firpo doesn't complain. Mind you, Dempsey did this throughout his career, but Dempsey got hit low a lot too, and he never complained either. That was the way the sport was. Back in those days, when a guy got hit low, you didn't complain to the referee. You just did it back harder to let him know you weren't going to take that. So he hits Firpo. Firpo hits the canvas for a 5th time now. And Firpo, people are thinking, this, he can't get up. Somehow he manages to get up. The unfairness of the fight lay in the fact that Dempsey was standing over him. One can only wonder what would have happened if Dempsey's in the farthest neutral corner. Firpo's over here directly across the ring from him. It's the count on 9. He gets up. He still has another 4 or 5 seconds before Dempsey gets to him. And that would have given him more time to recover. They didn't do that back then, but because of this fight, they instituted that rule. Firpo's there. This is only a 3-minute round. This is happening very quickly in real time. Firpo's, circling him. He's throwing out a jab. And when Dempsey gets close, he tries to hold him. Dempsey hits him again. Bang, Firpo goes down. 6th knockdown of the round. And Firpo's really hurt. He's slowly trying to make it to his feet. Unfortunately for him, Dempsey's standing right over him. So the minute Firpo lifts those knees off the canvas, he's going to hammer him. And Firpo's got to take that. Firpo gets up again. And the people just, everyone's yelling, stay down. Stay down. Because now people are thinking, you're going to get killed. We don't want to see a ring fatality here. Stay down. And he doesn't. He gets up. They start going at it again, pounding each other, throwing shots. And he hits him again, and Firpo goes down for the 7th time. And fans are like, oh, my God, this guy can't get up. And Firpo gets up. And because Dempsey's standing over him, Firpo gets up and shoves him. And Firpo's angry. He said, this isn't right. You can't, it's one thing to knock me down. You can't just, he's screaming, you can't just stand there and hit me when I'm on the canvas. How would you like it? And he starts throwing punches back. His anger gets the better of him, and I'm not going to stop. So he's throwing shots, and he won't stop. His attitude at this point is, you're going to have to kill me. You're going to have to put a gun to my head and pull the trigger, because I'm going to kill you now, Jack Dempsey. And he's throwing shots, and Dempsey's trying to fire back, and he lands a good right hand, and Dempsey goes through the ropes. And the photo you have there is Dempsey's legs are up in the air. He goes right back through the ropes. Head hits the typewriters of all these New York writers who love him. And, Firpo's waiting there for him to come back in the ring. And the referee's not really doing anything. He should be counting. But Dempsey's getting in the ring. The referee starts counting, and Dempsey finally makes it back into the ring before 10. The referee did count. Firpo's yelling at him, aren't you supposed to be counting? And starts counting. Dempsey gets back in the ring, and he's out. He's out on his feet, from the punch, from the fall. And you know how sometimes if you're lying in bed or in a chair and you're reading, if you're lying in bed reading, and you get up and you're dizzy, that's your blood pressure, and the blood rushing from your head. So Dempsey was dizzy. He didn't know where he was. He was nauseous. Gets up, and he holds Firpo. He's holding on for dear life. Firpo's trying to get away from him. But Dempsey's not a stupid defensive fighter. He knows how to block shots in close, and he just refuses to let go of Firpo's arms, because he's thinking is, if he gets one arm loose and hits me again, I'm done. So he's hanging on, and he's hanging on. And Jack Doc Kearns, his manager, is yelling, 10 seconds left, Jack, just 10, hang on for 10, 5. And then Dempsey's holding him. Ding, the bell ends, and Dempsey's corner helps him to, Dempsey goes to his corner, and his corner works furiously on him, as Firpo's corner works furiously on him. Firpo in the corner is just like, whoa, wow, this is incredible. This guy's strong. He's been knocked down 7 times. He's been concussed 7 separate times, but he's so incredibly tough and incredibly strong that he's sitting there and he's just looking at Dempsey thinking, I'm going to kill you. You're going to stand over me like that? I'm going to kill you. And Dempsey is in his corner of Jack Duck Kearns saying to him, Jack, you know, it takes just one punch. And if he lands another lucky punch, that could be it. You got to get low, get low, make yourself a smaller target, smash his body, start hitting him in the liver more often, and then bring it upstairs. And Dempsey loved to do that. Right hook to the body, left to the liver, take a left foot back, bang, left hook to the chin. And Dempsey could do it within a second. Literally 2 or 3 punches within a second and a half. So the next round starts, and Firpo comes out, and he's cautious. Dempsey's going right after him because Dempsey's, you can see it on the tape. Dempsey's sort of like a blip on a radar. He's just moving, he's moving around. He wants Firpo to extend his arms so he can slip under them and then hit him with a shot in the ribs or a shot in the head. And that's exactly what happens. He's going after Firpo, knocks him down again. Firpo gets up, and Firpo's hanging on, and Dempsey shoves him off. Firpo lands a couple of shots. Dempsey, once again, left to the liver, right to the body, left upstairs. Down goes Firpo again for the 8th time, 9th knockdown of the fight. And then Firpo, it's catching up with him. How much can a man take? A man can only take so much of a beating, especially from Jack Dempsey. No one other than Joe Louis could punch like Jack Dempsey. Guys that fought Dempsey rarely fought again, and a lot of them had lifelong deficits. Dempsey was a vicious puncher. He was a student of the game, and when he had you hurt, he was looking to put you away for good. Dempsey didn't know how to take it easy. He didn't know how to take a breather. Even in sparring back then, he would knock the hell out of his sparring partners. He didn't know how to take it easy. Dempsey was a gentleman outside the ring. He was a nice guy, but something happened to him. Once he got in that ring, there was a complete change in his personality. The nice guy, whatever left, he just became this mauler, this killer. His eyes would fog over, and he would just look at you like a piece of meat. And he couldn't wait to get in there and pound the hell out of you. This is what he lived for. This defined him. And this was during his prime. And so Firpo's lucky to have lasted that long. And he gets up, Dempsey drops him again, 10th knockdown of the fight. And Firpo's really, he's in bad shape. He's shaking his head, moving his neck around, trying to gather himself. Dempsey comes in again immediately. And there's no delay, unfortunately. So there he is. He's on the canvas. Dempsey's a foot away. He gets up. The referee gets between them for a second, stops, and Dempsey comes in right away. Firpo doesn't have the neutral corner advantage rule at this point in time to give him an extra couple seconds. Dempsey clobbers him again, and Firpo goes down and then rolls over on his back, and then the referee counts him out. And the fans are going crazy. And Firpo, after the fight, very calm, and said, I got ripped off. He was helped back into the ring. The rules say you can't do that. The rules say you can't hit a man when he's on the canvas. He hit me repeatedly when I was on the canvas. You cannot do that. And yet the referee didn't do anything. Is the referee at fault? Yes, the referee's at fault. People say, well, the referee, lost his head in the heat of battle. BS. The referee gets paid not to lose his head in the heat of battle. The referee should have warned Dempsey or taken a point away. The first time he did it, the Firpo hit him when he was down. He should have called the timeout, pushed Dempsey away, and say, that's one. You can't hit the man when he's down. Don't do that again. And if he did it again, that's two. And then the third time, disqualify them. If they had a different referee, would that have happened? No. You know why? Because Dempsey was big money. Dempsey was $1 million gates. And boxing didn't want to lose Dempsey. Firpo wasn't well known, despite Tex Records' huge publicity campaign to get Firpo well known and to have people look at him as a viable contender, which is what filled the Polo Grounds. If they viewed him as just a crude slugger, which is what he was, not that many people would have come. So there wasn't a chance that they were going to let Dempsey lose. Did Gallagher do it deliberately? I don't think he did. I don't think he was thinking in his head, oh, I'm not going to warn him for this, or I'm not going to warn him for that. Things were happening so quickly. You hit a guy goes down, you hit him again, he moves him away, and then the guy's already up. You can't, and then so you're trying to warn him, he's already on top of the guy. He didn't really have a chance, but he lost control of the fight. He lost control of the fight. And I mentioned this to my producer, Eric, earlier before. It disturbed me last week when I watched the Yerbosnelli fight, Adis Yerbosnelli against David Morrell, because the referee, Tony Weeks, is a great referee. So was Ruby Goldstein, until he had a fight in which Benny Kid Paret died. Weeks has been a great referee, but he could have stopped the fight and should have stopped the fight earlier, and so should have Yerbosnelli's corner. Obviously, the man was in trouble, and I wanted to talk about that a bit. In boxing, as opposed to the Dempsey Firpo fight, Firpo was fighting back. His eyes weren't closed. He was throwing punches. His eyes were clear. When he looked at the referee in his corner, he could focus. Yerbosnelli was different. He got dropped, I think, in the 5th round or earlier with a straight left hand. That's significant. When a southpaw throws a straight left hand, or an orthodox guy throws a straight right hand, you're throwing it across your body, which means you're telegraphing it. It's called a sucker punch. And what you're saying to your opponent is, you're so inept that I'm going to show you what I'm doing, and you still can't stop it. So the only way a guy gets hit with a punch like that is either he doesn't know what he's doing, which wasn't the case of Yerbosnelli, or he's injured, which was the case with him. He was blinking furiously from the 5th round on. Watch the Firpo fight. Firpo's not blinking at all. Blinking from both eyes nonstop is indicative of a severe brain injury, most likely an edema, a brain bleed. People in boxing know this. The referee know this. Now, I've seen so many posts on people's podcasts, other podcasts, and online from a lot of people that I really like, saying, well, the ref's not at fault, the doctor's not at fault, and the corner's not at fault. I can't accept that, because that's what boxing does. Somebody gets injured critically, and no one's at fault. Fighters died in Dempsey's era. No one's at fault. Willard killed a guy named John Bull. No one's at fault. That's just not, it's not logical. People are at fault when someone dies. There's a safety net in boxing that's supposed to work, and it didn't. Yerbosnelli's corner man should be criminally charged and forever banned from the sport. They could see that he couldn't tell the shots coming, and he was being moved across the ring, by these shots. Plus, his eyes were swelling shut, and he was blinking furiously. What Tony Weeks said was he was fighting back. He wasn't fighting back effectively. Fighting back is when you're fighting back to the extent that the guy you're fighting is not going to risk coming at you. That's fighting back. Throwing 1 or 2 punches while you're getting your skull turned to mush is not fighting back. Fight should have been stopped. Weeks should have stopped the fight. Also, the doctor in a boxing match doesn't need anyone's permission. The doctor should have come up in the ring and looked at him and known that because he was blinking furiously that he's got a brain bleed, stop the fight. Doctor never once checked him until after the fight. And the doctor was very calm. I watched the fight several times. I wish I could make out what the doctor was saying after the fight. Yerbosnelli went to the hospital right after, had, I believe, part of his skull removed to relieve pressure on his brain, and then was put into a medically induced coma. What's worse than that? What's worse than that is the criminal organization known as the WBA, which is, you know why they're based in Panama? Because if they were based in the US or Canada, they'd all be in prison. They put out a release this week saying, according to doctors, he's made a full recovery, he's perfectly fine, and has no after effects. So when I looked into it, that's completely not true. It's an utter lie. He's not completely fine. He's still in a coma. He still has a brain bleed. He still has brain damage. This is what goes on in professional boxing, and this needs to be eliminated. People like the WBA, that needs to be gotten rid of. This could have been prevented. It always could have been prevented, and it wasn't prevented. The classy person in all of this is David Morrell Jr. in his corner, because they're still at the hospital. They still went right after to the hospital, and they stayed with him, and they're continuing to stay with him. So It's part of the sport. I can't accept people saying, well, that's boxing. It's no one's fault. That's BS. That's BS. You can't say it's not the doctor's fault. It's not the referee's fault, and it's not his corner's fault. There's a safety net that works in boxing, and it's supposed to work. And when it works, fighters don't die. Sometimes fighters die anyways because of too many fights in too short a time span. Or as we saw in Montreal, that woman last year from Jeanette Zacharias, who was from Mexico, she wasn't a prize fighter. She'd had 4 fights. She was just a housewife who was 19, 18, and decided she wanted to be a boxer, so she got in the ring. That should not have happened. With Dempsey, back then in those days, the sport was like in the Wild West. Dempsey was the reason for big money in sports and boxing. That's why the mafia got into it in the 20s. Because before Dempsey, when fighters, heavyweight champions, were making 10,000 or 20,000 or 5,000 a fight, the mob thought, well, that's not even worth the effort to rob them. And once Dempsey's making millions, they think, oh, this is great. We get a piece of the gross, the mob says. We get a piece of Dempsey's money. We get a piece of the opponent. We take the broadcasting rights money, and we also bet on it if we know who's going to win. So they got greedy. That's another story. So Firpo goes on after this fight. He has more fights. He wins some, he loses some. He gets tired of the hypocrisy of the United States. He doesn't want to give money to the mob. He's not going to take that. And he's smart enough to realize, if these mob guys keep bothering me, I'm going to kill one of them, and then they're going to go after me. So he just leaves. He goes back to Argentina and invests his money, and he comes up being fabulously wealthy. For Dempsey, he had this fight and the Gibbons fight, and then he doesn't fight for 3 years. And then he has to fight Gene Tunney. And he wasn't ready for Gene Tunney. But that fight was also, this is all in my book coming out, Boxing's Greatest Controversies, Blunders, Blood Feuds, and Bad Decisions. That's a fight for another day. Back then, there were no special things in place to secure the health of a fighter. So there were fighters, it was common. I'm not saying it was common, it was uncommon. It wasn't uncommon for a fighter to die from injuries sustained in a fight. That happened back then. It shouldn't be happening today if boxing commissions do their job, and if medical techniques we have today and the machines and neurosurgeons do their job with fighters. They should know that, this person's in trouble, I'm stopping the fight. Back then, it didn't happen, and it never happened in Dempsey's time, and there was a reason it didn't happen in a Jack Dempsey fight, and that was fans would have rioted. Back then, and today, you know how expensive it is to see a fight, but back then, fights were prohibitively expensive. If you were going to pay $150, $300, $500 for a ringside seat in the 20s, you weren't going to pay that, even if you were wealthy, and see a fight that went 1 round. You would feel ripped off. And so would the people who paid for tickets way in the nosebleed seats. They wanted to see people bleed and get hit and get hurt. So fights had to be allowed to go on. In today's world, 11 knockdowns in the Dempsey fight with Firpo, right? Dempsey went down once, Firpo went down 10 times. So if that happened today, do you actually think a referee today or boxing commission would allow Firpo to go down 10 times? It would have been stopped midway through the first round. After 3-4 knockdowns, they just would have said, that's it. You're done. Frazier went down 6 times. And after the 6 knockdown in the second round, my mentor, Angelo Dundee, got onto the ring apron and was screaming at Arthur Mercani, he's going to kill him. What are you waiting for? Stop it. And he stopped it and saved Joe Frazier's life. It didn't happen back then. Dempsey was not like any other person on this planet. Dempsey descended from the heavens to rejuvenate boxing. He put the jazz in jazz age. All the excitement you feel today watching a boxing match when somebody's talking or somebody calls you and you go, hey, wait. No, I can't talk to you now. There's a fight on. It's a championship fight. When you went to see Pacquiao, fight Marquez, and you went to see Pacquiao, fight Timothy Bradley, and Pacquiao fight Margarito, all that excitement that you feel, or Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Dempsey did that. Dempsey was the one who did that, because you looked at Dempsey in the corner and you thought anything could happen. This guy could go out and conceivably hit this man and decapitate him. Dempsey had that look of a lion, and he came out with that snarling look, and he just obliterated people. Dempsey was a one-man gang. And today, when they rate the greatest fighters of all time, you have Ali and Larry Holmes and Marciano, who certainly deserves to be up there because he had the greatest right-hand punch of any fighter that ever lived, and Joe Louis, who I consider the greatest of all heavyweight champions. But you have to put Dempsey up there, because people say, well, you know, Tyson Fury's 6'9". Before he fought Jess Willard and before he fought Firpo, he beat Fred Fulton, who was 6'7". He beat Carl Morris, who was 6'7". He beat a lot of guys that were very tall and had really good records. And Dempsey, if you were tall, he'd butcher you. He'd break your ribs. He would literally break your ribs till you were in such pain that you would hold them and bend over, and then he would knock you out. That's how good Dempsey was. He knew what he was doing every second in that ring. He was a smart fighter, tremendous defense. He learned from every fighter he had ever met. And he said to Angelo Dundee said, the amazing thing about you was you were never afraid in the ring of any man. And Dempsey said, not true, Ange. I only feared one man who terrified me to the point where I couldn't speak and my knees were knocking together. And he said, who was that? Sam Langford, the greatest fighter from Weymouth Falls, Nova Scotia, who never won a world title. He was supposed to fight him early in his career when his manager, who was a crook then, John the Barber Riesling, said, I got you a fight against Langford. And Dempsey was, you know, still 19, 18. He was in New York, and he said, there's no way. There's no way. Everyone knew what a killer Langford was, and he refused to fight him. Later on, financially, he helped Langford out. He had a night for him, I think, at Yankee Stadium to raise money for him. And Dempsey was like that. Dempsey was going to fight Harry Wills, but after Jack Johnson, they weren't going to allow another black man a shot at the title for a long time. And his manager, Doc Kearns, prevented Wills from getting the fight. And they went to Chicago, and he fought Gene Tunney or Philadelphia, excuse me. The thing about Harry Wills was 6'4". He was known as the Brown Panther. And people were saying, well, he should have been given a shot because he would have beaten him. I don't think Wills would have beaten him because he was tall. If you were tall against Dempsey, you were in big trouble because Dempsey knew what to do. And I think Wills was past his prime at that point. If it was years before, it may have been a different story. Dempsey has to rank as one of the top 5, if not top 3, heavyweight champions ever to have lived. In fact, I don't consider John L. Sullivan to be the first heavyweight champion. He was the best white fighter, but Sullivan's main gift to boxing was popularizing it globally. Jack Dempsey took it from him and made it a world phenomenon. Dempsey was popular in France. He was popular in Germany. He was popular in Japan, China, the Middle East. Honest to God, you know, Norway, Scandinavia, everyone loved Jack Dempsey. He became part of the language. There's a fish named after him. But when people would fight or threaten people, you know, they still say today, who do you think you are, Jack Dempsey? Dempsey meant winning. Dempsey meant champion. Dempsey meant destruction. The word, when you know how they call fighters now, former fighters, you always call them champ. Dempsey was the first one. Dempsey was always addressed as champ. It was his name because no one was more indelible in the minds of Americans and Canadians and other people around the world as the world heavyweight champion, as the champion of champions, as Jack Dempsey. Years ago, in the Second World War, George S. Patton said that all glory is fleeting. That's not true. Dempsey's glory is eternal because even today, people write books. My friend and publisher and mentor, Adam Pollock, has a magnificent book on Dempsey. And so does Randy Roberts, who's a great writer. And Roger Kahn's book, A Flame of Pure Fire, which he was, has a great book on Dempsey. You got to read these books. People are still coming out with books on Dempsey because he still has such a hold over the public. Think about this. Dempsey hasn't been a world champion since 1926. That's 96 years ago. And yet, He's still common. His name is still known all throughout the world. This man is incredible. He's endlessly fascinating. Please go to YouTube. I'm begging you, go to YouTube, watch this fight. Turn the fight on and watch Dempsey and Firpo. You will not believe what you see. Watch the fight with Willard. The Willard fight can be hard to watch because Willard's taken a ferocious beating. When he hit Willard in the first round, 12 of Willard's teeth come out, and you can see people reaching into the canvas, the fans, to grab his teeth. When Dempsey knocked guys out, he didn't just knock them out, he put them in the hospital for months. This is one of the greatest fighters of all time, maybe the greatest puncher, pound for pound, that ever lived. And if you don't know the story of Jack Dempsey, I truly, in my heart, feel sorry for you. Please go look him up. Please get a book on Dempsey. Please watch him on YouTube. This is one of the all-time greatest athletes, I would say in the top 3 or 5 athletes ever to walk the face of the earth. Years later, as I said, him and Firpo were close friends. He was great friends of George Carpentier after. He actually hired Jess Willard during the Depression, and when he had his famous bar Dempsey's, which I should have mentioned, for years. And Dempsey, he hired Willard until Willard said the beer here was terrible, and then he had to let Willard go. But he still gave money to Willard. When Dempsey was in his 80s, he was coming home one night, and 2 guys in their early 20s mugged him. And Dempsey took a stance, hit one guy with the right hand, busted his jaw, hit the other guy with the left. The guy's head went into the wall. He fell unconscious on his face, broke his nose. He's like 81, 82 at the time. These guys are in their 20s. They don't know who he is. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's Jack Dempsey. You're not going to beat him. Can't happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Lou Eisen. I want to thank you for watching Ring Talk today. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Enjoy your week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and please keep watching boxing. Thank you. Bye-bye.